Flight 728 accelerated.
At first, it felt like ordinary turbulence. The cabin. Daniel looked at the altitude display.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are dealing with an emergency.
Hadn't deployed. He asked the flight attendant to check the system. Seconds later, she looked up with a pale face.
There's a problem.
Afraid, the person who stays calm becomes the strongest person in the room.
Thank you.
That morning looked completely ordinary. Hundreds of passengers were rushing through the airport, heading toward their destinations.
Daniel boarded Flight 728 and took his seat by the window. Around him, passengers settled in. Some were talking, some were already sleeping. Everything felt normal.
The cabin doors closed. The engines roared. Flight 728 accelerated down the runway, and moments later, disappeared into the clouds. See this. For the next 2 hours, everything was perfectly normal. Daniel looked out at the endless sea of clouds below. Nothing.
Then, without warning, the aircraft shook. At first, it felt like ordinary turbulence. Then, the entire plane suddenly dropped. The cabin lights flickered. Once.
Twice.
Then they went completely dark. Emergency lights came on. And Daniel looked at the altitude display. 18,000 feet. Then 15,000. Then 12,000. The numbers were dropping far too quickly. Then the captain spoke. His voice was no longer calm.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are dealing with an emergency.
Panic spread through the cabin.
We don't know what's going to happen yet, but if we panic, we make everything worse.
Daniel noticed another problem. The oxygen masks hadn't deployed. He asked the flight attendant to check the system. Seconds later, she looked up with a pale face.
There's a problem.
Then Daniel remembered something his father once told him. When everyone is afraid, the person who stays calm becomes the strongest person in the room. Then Daniel looked outside, and his heart stopped. A massive thunderstorm was directly ahead. Daniel walked toward the cockpit. The flight attendant tried to stop him. Daniel looked at her and said one thing, please.
Just give me 30 seconds.
The storm is moving east. If we turn northwest first, we may be able to get around the worst part of it.
Are you sure?
No, but I know flying directly into that storm is worse.
For a few seconds nobody spoke. Then the captain made a decision. Turn northwest. The aircraft began changing direction.
And then everything changed. The shaking stopped. The aircraft had escaped the worst part of the storm.
The navigation system began working again. But there was still one final challenge: an emergency landing.
The runway appeared through the clouds. The aircraft touched down hard. It bounced once, then twice. But finally, it stopped. Full. The doors opened. One by one, the passengers stepped onto the runway. Some were crying. Some were. Then the little girl Daniel had noticed earlier ran toward him. She hugged him and whispered,
Thank you.
"You're welcome."
You may have saved everyone on this plane today. I was scared too. That's what makes it courage.
That day, Daniel learned something he would never forget. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. Courage means you're afraid, and you still choose to act. And sometimes, the difference between tragedy and survival is just the last 30 seconds. When everyone else loses hope, be the person who chooses to act.
That morning looked completely ordinary. Hundreds of passengers were rushing through the airport, heading toward their destinations.